Well, this is Doyle on Spirit Talk Show. You're back for part two with Alison McBain. We're reading AI generated stories. Alison's getting an experience of what it's like, what's the creative aspect of AI. Alison is an author who's in a challenge right now to write one book a week for 52 weeks. And you're in the middle of that right now. So it started in April. Oh my gosh, it's October. So you are right in the middle of it. How many books have you written?
Yes. I think I'm in week 26. I'd have to check to make sure. I lose track of the weeks actually.
So are these books that you intend to publish, right? Or is it like a challenge to write books? Like you're going to try to publish these books when it's all done?
Definitely. I'm hoping I can get them all out there.
Oh, cool. Cool. Well, where primarily do people find your books?
Um, well, they're available pretty much everywhere. So I have four published books. So, the usual
Okay.
suspects,
Uh,
bookstores,
Amazon and
yeah,
bookstores. Okay, cool.
Amazon, yeah.
So,
Hmm.
okay. So you are gracious enough to let me take one of your actual descriptions of one of your books and we had AI generate this is the full description that's on the back of your book, right? If I bought this book, this would be the full description on the back, right?
Yeah, this is the summary that I wrote when I was preparing to write this book. This was actually the first book that started off my project back in April.
Oh, wow. This is okay. So here we go. You're going to get to experience with me this book that was generated based on your prompt. Okay. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, awesome. Amy hadn't been back to the ocean since the night her twin sister, Sora, drowned. It had been 3 years since the accident, but the sound of waves still filled her nightmares. Even now, standing in the cramped studio where she was apprenticing, the hum of tattoo machines and the scent of antiseptic couldn't wash away the guilt. Her art was the only place she allowed herself to process what happened that night. The dark images of drowning figures, twisted faces, and ghostly hands reaching up from the depths filled her sketchbooks. Today was no different. She hunched over her sketch pad, filling the page with sharp lines. The images, the image of Sora's face floating just beneath the surface of her thoughts. Her mentor, Darius, watched her with his usual unreadable expression from across the room. Darius was an odd duck, as her friends called him. He looked like he had stepped out of another time, with his long leather coat and penchant for whispering strange phrases under his breath as he worked. His tattoos were infamous for their bold designs and eerie realism, and his clients swore that the ink held a kind of magic. But there was something off about the place, and Amy had noticed it from the start. She just couldn't put her finger on it. Your lines are good, Darius said suddenly, his voice rough like gravel. But your shadows, they're too real. Amy glanced up, her pencil hovering midair. Too real? What do you mean? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he walked over, tilting his head at her work. You've seen death, he muttered almost to himself. You felt it, and it shows in your art. You can't hide from that. Amy stiffened. She didn't like when he talked like this, like he knew things about her that she hadn't told anyone. But she shrugged it off, focusing back on the page. She had come here to learn, not to get therapy. Art was the only thing that made sense anymore, and tattooing was the next step, the only step forward that didn't feel like drowning. Yet something wasn't right with the clients lately. Over the last few weeks, some of them had returned looking different. There was Eric, whose dragon tattoo seemed to glow faintly beneath his skin whenever the lights flickered. And then there was Kelly, whose flower sleeve looked like it was blooming, the petals moving as if caught in a breeze no one else could feel. Amy had chalked it up to her imagination, but then things started happening, strange things. Eric had snapped one day, getting into a fight at a bar. It was brutal, out of nowhere, like something inside him had broken loose. Kelly hadn't shown up for work in days, and rumor had it she was holed up in her apartment, too scared to leave. The common thread? They had both been inked by Darius. Amy's unease grew when her friend Jada came in for a tattoo. Jada wanted something simple, a crescent moon, delicate and detailed. But as the machine buzzed, Amy caught herself staring at the ink pooling under Jada's skin. For a brief moment, it looked like the moon was moving, expanding. She blinked, shook her head, but the feeling remained gnawing at her gut. Jada left the shop happy, but within days, she was different. It wasn't just her mood. Something had shifted in her eyes like a dark current had swept her away. She lashed out at her younger brother, screamed at their mom. It wasn't like her at all. Amy couldn't ignore it anymore. There was something wrong with Darius's ink. She confronted him one evening after the shop closed, her heart pounding in her chest. What's happening to the people you tattoo? She demanded. Eric, Kelly, Jada? Something's changed in them, and I know it's because of the ink. Darius leaned back against his station, folding his arms, his face calm, but his eyes intense. People who wear ink invite change, Amy. It's part of the art, the magic. The ink, it reflects who they truly are. Magic? Repeated, incredulous. You're telling me that these tattoos are making people violent? Not making them violent, Darius corrected, uncovering what was already inside them. The ink only activates what's buried deep. People can't hide from themselves forever. Amy's blood ran cold. Was it true? Had Jada always had this dark side, or was something else at play? The idea of the ink revealing hidden darkness terrified her, but another part of her wanted to understand. If the ink could do that to others, what would it reveal about her? There was only one way to know. The next day, Amy made the decision to tattoo herself. She set up the machine, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared the ink. Darius watched her from the corner, offering no advice, no warnings. He simply observed. She chose the design carefully, two figures intertwined, one light, one dark. It represented her and Sora, the bond they had shared before that terrible night. The buzz of the needle filled the air, and as the ink seeped into her skin, Amy's thoughts drifted. Her mind was drawn back to the ocean, to the night of the accident. She had been there, so close, but she couldn't save Sora. The guilt flooded back, and with it something more, something darker. As the tattoo took shape on her arm, she felt a shift deep within her. It was subtle at first, like a whisper at the edge of her mind. But soon it grew louder, a voice telling her that maybe she hadn't done enough, that maybe she could have saved her sister. And then the ink moved. The dark figure on her arm twisted, its eyes gleaming with something malevolent, something real. Amy's breath hitched as the figure seemed to pull itself free from the design, crawling up her arm like a living shadow. She gasped, yanking the needle away, but it was too late. The ink had come alive, and whatever darkness she had buried inside was staring her in the face. It whispered her deepest fear, the thing she had never wanted to admit. You let her die. The room spun, and Amy's vision blurred as the tattoo shifted and writhed, wrapping around her arm. The dark figure sneered, while the lighter one, Sora, seemed to fade, swallowed by the shadows. Amy stumbled back, her heart racing. She had to stop this. She had to control it. But how? Her gaze snapped to Darius, who watched her with an expression of quiet fascination. Now you see, he said softly. Now you understand. But Amy didn't want to understand. She wanted to fight. With a surge of determination, she grabbed the tattoo needle again, her hands steadying. If the ink could bring out the darkness in people, it could also bring out the light. She worked furiously, adding details to the lighter figure, giving Sora form, strength, hope. The ink fought back, the dark figure thrashing against her skin, but Amy didn't stop. She wouldn't let it win. She wouldn't let the darkness define her or Sora. When the last line was complete, Amy collapsed, gasping for breath. The figures on her arm settled, the dark one retreating while the light one, Sora, stood strong, her eyes filled with a quiet peace. The whispering stopped. The darkness receded. Amy looked up at Darius, who gave a slow nod. You're stronger than I thought. I'm stronger than I thought, she whispered, more to herself than to him. But even as the ink cooled on her skin, she knew this was only the beginning. The darkness inside of her was real. and so was the light. And now she had the power to choose which one would define her.
Wow. Okay. I think I would like to go ahead and read the prompt because I don't know. That story was great. I think.
Yeah,
Let me have you read your prompt. So, you want to go ahead and read it?
sure. So this was a young adult horror story, and the prompt was Amy feels haunted by the death of her twin sister when they were both 13. She's consumed by guilt for not being able to save her sister from drowning and has since struggled with depression, which she expresses through her dark and graphic art. Fresh out of high school, Amy apprentices with an odd duck mentor to follow her dream of becoming a tattoo artist. But something seems to be going wrong with several of the people her mentor tattoos. The subject matter of the artwork seems to be coming to life and creating human monsters. Is the ink activating something in the people who are already susceptible to committing violence? Or is it a terrible coincidence? Amy's not sure if she's imagining everything until a good friend of hers goes rogue after she gets inked. That leaves Amy with a final solution to discover what's going wrong, to put herself under the needle.
So, what was the name of this book when you published it? Is it something that's published?
Nope, it's not published yet. It was
Okay.
the
Oh,
first of this project,
so you don't have a
and
title of it? It has no title yet.
it does have a title, and trying to remember what it was. One second, I can look
This
it
is
up.
okay. So, well, while you do
It's
now,
called the ink collector.
ink collector, and are you into tattoos yourself? Is that something you're interested in? Tattoos? Is that
Um, I have a tattoo,
yeah? I mean, I've once.
so yes, I do like tattoos, but
Okay. So yeah, my guest I recorded earlier today had like 17 tattoos. So she was. It's
mhm.
funny that they both came up. So okay, well now as the author of the original story, how did ChatGPT 2? What are the problems? What worked? What didn't work? What's different from yours?
I liked it. So I did enjoy what ChatGPT came up with. Obviously, with a book, you have more room to explore like side plots. Like, so in my novel, there are definitely a lot of those. Like, such, for example, it's a YA, so there's romance that happens, and um, uh, there is a real villain in my book.
Yeah,
This one just seemed to be the ink is culpable, but there is in my book there is definitely a human villain who is creating these monsters for the characters, and the solution is definitely different
yeah. Well, I kind of like the
from.
idea that the creature on her arm became the creature and actually stepped off her arm. That was kind of creepy.
Mhm.
So okay,
Yeah, that was cool.
and so I missed some stuff about your story in your book, but overall, do you think it got the essence of your story or what you were thinking when you wrote it?
Yeah, it definitely got the essence. And this is sort of like a good showing of how ChatGPT, the more details you give them, give it, the more complex the story that it can create.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before where if you just say write me a scary story about artwork, it writes something about about the level of a sixth grader. But if you the more details you give it, although I think there's a plateau too because I had a person who had like 2 page like prompts and it seemed to get lost in the prompt. So I think it's details
Uh,
but not too much detail. So okay, well let me see what we have here.
okay.
Okay, and here's one for me. The first sign that something was wrong at Edmonton came when Sarah's cat, Milo, stopped purring. He used to greet her every evening with his soft rumble, but tonight he just stared, his eyes wide and glassy and wrong. It wasn't long before she noticed the news. Animals all over the city were turning rabid, attacking anything that moved. Not just cats and dogs, birds, squirrels, even deer in the river valley had gone mad, their eyes dead, their movements jerky and unnatural. People called it zombification. Very imaginative. But it was worse than anything Sarah had imagined. The animals didn't just bite, they hunted. That night, she heard a howling outside. A pack of coyotes, their flesh rotting, was tearing through the street. attacking anything in their path. She locked the doors and windows, her heart pounding, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. She grabbed Sarah grabbed what she could, a backpack stuffed with canned food, water, and an old camping knife. There was no time for more. The radio crackled, warning residents to stay indoors. But the streets were already chaos. People were running, shouting. It was a matter of time before the undead animals found their way inside. She needed to leave now. With her heart racing, Sarah slipped out the back door into an alley. She avoided the main roads, weaving through the empty parking lots and dark alleys. The air was thick with the smell of decay. She could hear the growls and screeches in the distance, getting closer. Her only thought, escape. As she reached the outskirts of the city, Sarah looked back at the skyline, now a war zone. Edmonton was gone, overrun by the beasts. Ahead was the unknown, but anything was better than what was behind her. Okay, well, that was kind of interesting. The prompt was write a story about when animals become zombies. A woman has escaped the city of Edmonton, where she lives in order to find a safe wait, where she lives in order to find a safer place to live. Make it into words. Did I read that wrong? A woman has to escape the city of Edmonton, where she lives, in order to find a
Mhm.
safer place to live. Okay. Um, I do think it was really strange in the middle where it was saying, it said the crackle said everybody should stay on time, should stay inside, and then it was talking about everybody running around outside, right? It seemed like the transition between what the radio said and that was really hard. So I don't think that was the best story tonight. I think it was. Oh, what happened to my Zoom? I think it was good. So let's see if we
Yeah,
can find another story for you. Okay. Okay, let's see what we have here. Here's another one of your actual story prompts that is generating the story before our eyes. So I will let you start reading.
sure.
Yeah.
And okay. Belima had been in love with Kent Woodhouse for as long as she could remember. She grew up watching his films, those old black and white classics where he played the dashing lead with that irresistible smile and deep, brooding eyes. Though his career ended abruptly in the 1940s after a supposed drug overdose, his star had never dimmed in her heart. So when she found out that Kent's mansion, rumored to be haunted, was for sale in North Carolina, right after she received an unexpected inheritance, it felt like fate. The house, a grand old estate nestled among sprawling trees, had once been the backdrop to Hollywood's golden age. Belima jumped at the chance, selling everything and moving across the country to live in the place her idol had called home. The realtor had been hesitant. You know the stories, right? People say it's haunted. Kent Woodhouse's ghost has run off more than a few buyers. Belima had smiled politely. I don't believe in ghosts. But deep down, she almost hoped the stories were true. To live in his home, to breathe the air he had breathed, it was the closest she could get to him. She planned to turn the house into a museum, a tribute to the man who had stolen her heart through the silver screen. But from the moment she stepped through the door, she felt it. The air was thick, heavy with something unseen. And on the first night, she heard a voice, a low, angry voice echoing through the empty halls. Get out. She spun around, her heart pounding, but no one was there. Then he appeared. Kent Woodhouse stood before her just as she had imagined him. His black and white aura contrasted sharply with the vibrant colors of the modern world. She was awestruck, thrilled even. Here he was, her idol, standing right in front of her. But his expression was anything but welcoming. This is my house. You need to leave. Belima swallowed, steadying herself. I'm not going anywhere, Kent. He looked taken aback for a moment, then sneered, You don't belong here. I'll make you leave. Over the next few days, Kent tried everything to run her off. Strange noises in the night, objects moving, the temperature dropping to an icy chill whenever she stepped into certain rooms. But Belima was nothing if not stubborn. She had come here for him, and she wasn't about to let some angry ghost scare her away. What do you want, Kent? She finally asked one night, after waking to find him standing at the foot of her bed, his face shadowed by the dim light. He glared at her. I want my life back. His words chilled her to the bone. But as they spent more time together, she began to see the cracks in his anger, the sorrow that lay beneath. He wasn't just haunting the house, he was trapped, stuck in a cycle of bitterness and loss. One night after another failed attempt to spook her, Kent let slip something that made Belima's blood run cold. I didn't die from an overdose, he muttered, staring out the window at the moonlit grounds. I was murdered. Belima's heart skipped a beat. What? The papers said they lied. His voice was bitter. Someone wanted me dead, and they made sure it looked like an accident. Over the next few weeks, as Belima combed through the old archives and talked to locals who still remember the tragedy, the pieces began to fall into place. There were discrepancies in the reports, gaps in the timeline that suggested foul play. But who would have wanted him dead? That question was answered when a man showed up on her doorstep, a long lost relative of Kent's, claiming he had a right to the house. He was charming, polite, but there was something off about him, something Belima couldn't quite place. And when he started digging into her plans for the property, her suspicions grew. Kent was furious when she told him about the visitor. He's lying. He's the one who killed me. Belima stared at him, her heart racing. Are you sure? I was drugged that night, barely conscious. But I remember his face. He was there. He's after something hidden in the house. Determined to uncover the truth, Belima continued her investigation, digging deeper into Kent's final days. The more she learned, the more she realized that Kent's death had been about more than just envy or rivalry. It was connected to something valuable, something the killer had never found. As the long lost relative continued to press his claim to the house, Belima felt the walls closing in. If she didn't solve the mystery soon, she would lose everything: the house, her chance to honor Kent, and maybe even her own life. One night, as she, oh yeah,
Go, go, yeah,
one
go ahead.
night as she, oh sorry,
Yeah.
one night as she searched the mansion's attic, she found it, a hidden compartment in an old film reel canister. Inside was a set of documents, evidence that Kent had been blackmailing someone powerful, someone who had every reason to want him silenced. The relative showed up later that night, his polite facade cracking as he demanded the documents. But Belima had already called the police, and with Kent's ghost watching over her, she faced him down. As the police arrested him, the weight lifted from the house. The air felt lighter, the shadows less oppressive. Kent appeared one last time, his expression softer now, almost peaceful. You did it, he said quietly. You gave me justice. Belima smiled, tears in her eyes. I wasn't going to let you be forgotten. As he faded from view, he gave her a look she had seen so many times on screen, a look of gratitude and maybe even affection. The house was hers now, truly hers. And though Kent was gone, she knew his spirit would always be there, watching over her.
Okay, I say I was invested in this story. I really got into it. There were some problems. Did you see some problems with it? Uh,
Yeah, the main one is that the murderer is still alive because it was about 100 years ago.
well, that's what I'm saying. It was talking. I kind of had the idea that this was a house from the 40s, and she was,
Yeah.
and somehow, like nobody. He died presumably in the 40s, and this house is that empty, and somehow this long lost relative only came now to check out the house. So I'll have you read the prompt. Go ahead.
Sure, the prompt is Belima has long loved Kent Woodhouse, one of the 1940s black and white movie stars who died of a drug overdose in the middle of a promising career. When Kent's so-called haunted house goes up for sale right after Belima gets an unexpected windfall, she decides to move across the country to North Carolina and buy it. Her plan is to turn the house into a museum. She doesn't really believe in ghosts, no matter what the realtor tells her. So imagine her surprise to come face to face with her long lost idol. She's completely thrilled. Ken's ghost, however, is anything but pleasant. He tries to run her off several times, but she's as stubborn as they come and refuses to leave. Slowly, as they start to get to know each other, she realizes from what he says that he didn't OD as the newspapers reported at the time. He was murdered. When the long lost relative of Ken's shows up unexpectedly and challenges Balima's right to the property, she's caught by surprise when it turns out he might have a legitimate claim. Can Belima solve the mystery of Kent's death and give peace to the ghost she loves before she loses the house? Or will Kent or will she fail and Kent will be stuck as a ghost for eternity?
I'm sorry, that was in the way. Okay, so you have about 45 seconds to give your feelings and synopsis of AI over human created stories or what you thought about tonight. So go.
Tonight was a blast. It was
Yeah.
so much fun, and I have finally done author versus AI, as AI has written stories based on my books, and I feel like human creators will, for the foreseeable future, still come out on top.
Yeah, definitely. There was a lot of I liked that story. I was vested in it, but there was a lot of problems in the timing and the characters, and like it seemed like he was young, this character, and he was there when he died. So definitely it misses some things for us. So Allison, thank you so much for coming on Spirit to Talk Show. I would love to do this again if you'd like to. Come back and read some stories. Good luck with your book. Give the title of your book one more time. The New Empire, right?
The New Empire, yes.
Yes, get that on Amazon.
Thanks so much.
Okay, well, thank you. And if you guys would like to get involved, you can go to spirittalkshow.com. Of course, on Spirit Talk Show, you can see all past episodes, three seasons now, coming up on season 4 soon. Listen to them on all the major platforms. And please go check the website, spirittalkshow.com. Thank you for listening and say goodnight, Allison.
Good night.
Okay, thank you for listening.